right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Joseph. I'm Joe. He's Nick. I'm in the studio. Nick's out in another studio trying to connect. So you got me tonight so far, ladies and gentlemen. And you've had Nick in the chat room, so it hasn't been too bad. And I know he's been trying to connect to me here in the Think Radio Broadcast Center from the studio where he is right now. And in fact, you know, he's actually trying to call me right now. So let me just answer this and see if he's there. Nick, can you hear me? Nick, we can hear you, but you are terribly, terribly, terribly muffled. So not broadcast quality by any stretch of the imagination. We couldn't even have a conversation with the quality of that particular situation. But I could definitely hear you, so you're on the right track. So anyway, I'm just going to go right on with the show, Nick, and when you've got the microphone sorted out over there, then, that'll be great. But in the meantime, I think that our friends who are listening in would like me to continue. So I am just going here, looking at the notes that we made, okay, so let's get into this national daycare program stuff. One of the things that, when we talked, it was supposed to be the final word that we were going to have last week on the federal budget, and we did, and at that time, we were talking about, hang on just a second, I'm taking a sip of water, guys, hang on. There we go. So anyway, last week we were talking about some of the things that were buried in the budget documents, and the daycare thing was not really buried, but it's, given the size of the deficit, given all the talk that there was about, sexual harassment in the military, and given the talk about climate change and of course helping people out in this COVID environment after shutting their businesses down, etc. So, there were lots of things to talk about and lots of things for the government to focus on, lots of things for the opposition to focus on. One of the things that they didn't really spend a whole lot of time talking about was this proposal that has resurfaced yet again. I say yet again because this has popped up 2 or 3 times since the turn of the century, and each time it's either been beaten back or the Liberals who are proposing it have simply abandoned it. And that is the idea of having a national daycare program. Now, what exactly a national daycare program would look like, I'm not entirely sure. Because when you think about daycare, you're thinking about things like early childhood education, what have you. And I have to tell you, I don't call it that. I don't call it early childhood education. I'm not a big believer in state-run early childhood education. But to the degree that we're going to have it, if we're going to have it, I happen to think that that's something that should be run at the provincial level. And it's actually already, in some provinces, being done principally through the education systems. For instance, in Ontario now, we have all-day kindergarten, which is really a glorified kind of daycare. And of course, we have early childhood education. So we have junior kindergarten, which so far, to the best of my knowledge in Ontario, is not full-time. But, it's still, when you're talking about kids enrolling in school at 3 years old and 4 years old, that to me qualifies as daycare. Maybe not quite 3 years old, but 4 years old for sure. So, that kind of, in my view, as I say, qualifies it as daycare. And then in Quebec, of course, they just have a straight-up daycare program. And the government in Quebec subsidizes it, which is, maybe that's not the right way to say it. It's actually, the proper way to say it is the taxpayers subsidize it through redistribution of their income. People, that's how daycare is paid for in Quebec. So other provinces can, and some are experimenting with this stuff. So the first question that one has to ask themselves is, do we really, I'm listening to Nick, you guys can't hear him in the background. Okay, but there's Nick in the background. Are you there, Nick? Well, I could hear him. Are you there, Nick? Nick? All right. Well, Nick is getting set up there in the background. I don't know if he can hear me, but you were going to get him on pretty soon. So anyway, the question I have is, do we really need to have a national daycare program? And I'm not entirely sure that that's the case. Can you hear? Oh, no, Nick doesn't have his headphones on. That's why he can't hear me. So he had the wrong Nick, you had the wrong headphones on? Okay. They're having ladies and gentlemen, they're having a whole conversation in the background here without me. Okay. So the national, a national daycare program. So let me tell you what the justification was or is for a national daycare program. And here I'm quoting from an op-ed in the Regina, I think the Leader Post or whatever it was. A national daycare program is about giving children an opportunity to become all that they were meant to be as humans. So that is one of the justifications for a national daycare program, is because we have to give children an opportunity to become all that they were meant to be as humans. Another quote from this particular op-ed: the needs of all children everywhere are, and this is what we want to do, is we want to meet the needs of children, and we need a national daycare program to give the children what they need. And what are those needs, ladies and gentlemen? Well, the needs of all children everywhere are, and I'm quoting, encouragement, consistency, safety and security, trust, and intellectual stimulation. So these are the justifications, or some of the justifications, for having a national daycare program. And so the obvious question I have is, are we to infer from this that supporters of national daycare actually think that you and I are not providing our children with those kinds of, let's call it, opportunities? I'm not sure what's going on with Nick. Nick, are you there? I'm not entirely sure what's going on with Nick. So we're just going to leave him be again for the time being. And he is going to call in. If and ready, he's ready to call in. So that's the justification, my friends, for having a national daycare program. I'm not, there are a lot of problems with this that are sort of baked in. As I say, the implication, ladies and gentlemen, the implication is that parents today are not actually giving to their children the kind of not just education, but early education that you would expect that parents would give their children. They're not providing their children with an opportunity to become all that those children were meant to be as humans. They're not fulfilling the needs of their children. They're not giving them enough encouragement, safety and security, trust. They're not giving their children, ladies and gentlemen, enough intellectual stimulation. We must call in the government to provide all of those things because parents clearly are not doing it. Okay, am I the only one that has a problem with that? That's the implication, that parents are not looking after their children properly, that parents are not caring for their children, that parents are not giving their children what they need. That, ladies and gentlemen, I have a serious problem with. So that's the first problem. The second question that we all have to be asking ourselves is, why federal? Why not provincial? And how does this impact those provinces, the programs that are already out there that are, doing, presumably, these kinds of things that are caring for the children already in the province of Ontario, certainly in the province of Quebec. So these are serious questions. And it comes down to something that we've talked about many times on this show, I think, my friends, and that is the fundamental misunderstanding on the part of government officials today, particularly elected officials who are pushing for these kinds of programs, that, my friends, they don't seem to understand that while we have many levels of government, we only have one level of taxpayer.
The management and staff here at 102.9 and 104.5 are great, and they just spent the best part of an hour of their evening trying to get us on the air and broadcasting, because it's broadcasting live as we speak.
Oh, are we on now?
We are on now. We are on the air.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Okay,
Yep.
so all right. So let's set aside. We've been talking about daycare, Nick, for the last.
I know. I've been listening
because you've been listening. So, but,
I just couldn't say anything.
Yeah, the only thing is that. You could say a lot, but nobody would have heard.
That's right. It's kind of pointless.
Listen, there's a little bit of an echo from my own voice. I'm hearing a little bit of my own voice.
Yeah, the studio door's open. I'll just get them to kick that door shut, and that should kill that, because I'm hearing it too.
Okay, good enough. So, all right. So now we're going to have to shift here a little bit, because we might as well we've got about 10 minutes left. And we might as well take those 10 minutes or 9 minutes now to just talk about what you just mentioned, and that is, ladies and gentlemen, we didn't want to say anything. We were going to do just a test run this evening, and if everything worked out fine, we were going to make an announcement. But we have talked about this before over the course of the last year, and it's been very slow, excruciatingly slow, actually getting up and running. But the fact of the matter is that we are now on the Nick and Joe show. Is now, in addition to being broadcast live on the internet, we are now on two FM radio stations. Is that correct, Nick?
We're on two. Yes, that is correct. There's 102.9 and 104.5,
right,
and located here in the Ottawa Valley. And we're just delighted because we've been pursuing this for quite a while. And Chris here beside me, he's kind of technically watching over everything. To make sure that to him goes the credit for getting us on the air, because I didn't do anything. I was just pushing buttons and clicking on stuff he told me to. And so I want to give him a big pat on the back and a thank you, because this is the kind of thing, going back to live radio, this is what makes it so much fun, is you never know one night to the next what's going to happen. So it's a reminder that way. And starting out here when I started all those years ago was where I learned my trade, where I learned my craft. I mean, I remember listening a few years ago to some of those early shows, and here at the radio station, and they were terrible. They were the worst radio I think I've ever heard. But somebody must have heard something in them, because when I took them into Ottawa, the program director there gave me the shot based on what he heard. And I don't know what he heard, because what I heard after I listened to him later, oh my God, what did he see? But we're always our own worst critic, right? And from there it went on and took off. And that's where you and I first met. You were a guest on, was it my show? I'm trying to think whether my show or Lunch Bunch or something like that.
Yeah, I used to do the Lunch Bunch with some regularity, but I was for sure a guest on your show, Nick, on 2 or 3 or maybe 4 or 5 occasions over the course of time that you were doing your show from Ottawa. And it was always, we just had, it's funny because,